Sup, y'all? It's me, it's your boy Asmongold. Today, I'm going to talk to you guys about Warriors and Warlords of Draenor. Now, you guys know I don't really like to do a whole video with kind of people not really knowing what side of the fence I'm on. So, as I like to say, I'm going to fall off so we can move on. I am not happy with Warriors and Warlords of Draenor, period. I am not happy at all. I felt that in Siege of Orgrimmar, Warriors were at their absolute peak, and Arms was in a perfect position. It had as much utility as it needed, and also it had like the best mix of offensive and defensive abilities. And well, some people do say it was overpowered, and so okay, maybe like a little bit of a nerf was needed, but I believe that the amount of abilities that were removed for Arms has made the spec basically, well, if you're a demonology warlock, I'm actually curious about this. I wonder who has more active abilities, a Felguard or an Arms Warrior. And I'm trying to think about it because, okay, guys, let's think about this. So Felguard has their basic attack, they have their cleave, okay, and then they have a whirlwind. I think they also have a charge, and they have a stun. So we're already at 5, guys. And so Warriors, like their basic abilities is like, okay, auto attack. Since that's such a big deal, let's just count auto attack as an actual spell. And on top of that, let's go with Mortal Strike. Shit, see, I'm already drawing a blank, and we're at 2. Okay, Rend, Execute. Okay, and Colossus Smash. So best case scenario, we're even. All right, and yes, I know obviously Warriors have other abilities, and of course you can call Hearthstone an ability too. But I'm not really going to count that because that's fucking ridiculous. Like I am very upset. Like it really kind of sucks because like Arms has always been, to be honest, guys, Arms has always been my favorite spec. I've always really liked playing Arms. I remember whenever every expansion, like I'm always telling my guild, I'm like, yo guys, this is it. This is it. Arms is going to be viable. Arms is going to be viable. I'm going to top the charts. It's going to be just like fucking tier 11. It's going to be the best thing ever, right? And every single time, Fury is better, something else is better, and I'm never Arms it by the end of the tier. And I don't know if I will be at the end of this tier or not, and the reason for that is I don't really know if I'm going to have to play Gladiator stance. Like, honestly, whenever I log on and I play my Warrior for kind of an extended period of time, especially playing Arms, it almost makes me not really want to play the game, and it's very frustrating and upsetting for me, and that's one of the reasons why I haven't really done a whole lot of gameplay videos, and I just spend a lot of times like sitting in my garrison and just like imagining and remembering like whenever I had Overpower and Slam and Thunderclap spread deep wounds, and I had deep wounds in general. And so I'm going to kind of, the first thing I'm going to talk about here is what I think Arms needs and what I think Arms could at least use as at least a bandage for the fix here. And the main thing I think is that Arms needs Overpower back, and the reason for that is I think that it's very shitty and it's very clumsy. Excuse me. For Warriors to have to use Whirlwind as a single target filler rotation, and also as their main ability, honestly, because with how much of a cooldown Mortal Strike is, you're using Whirlwind more than anything else. And while that does make Warriors very good for AOE, having high AOE damage is a very gimmicky and in more cases than not unuseful mechanic. And so let's just take, for example, let's look at all the fights in Heimdall. Kargath, okay, you're going to go up and kill the little ads. That's kind of a big deal, but honestly, it's not really that much of a change. Like, I guess you could say that Warriors are useful in that way, but honestly, I would not really say that too much, and I don't think that the same people can go up for the chain thing. I'm not even entirely sure. And so anyway, Warriors are not very useful in that fight. And for Butcher, obviously, Arms Warriors are completely useless because it's a single target fight. For Tectus, I would say Warriors are relatively useful. And one of the problems, and I'm going to connect this to some other stuff, is that this is a huge issue, guys, is that I do not believe that you should be ever having to apply dots. If you guys don't know, you should always be using Taste for Blood if you're doing an AoE fight. And so if you're using Taste for Blood, you have to manually apply a rend. You have to manually apply a dot in melee range to multiple targets. Think about how fucking ridiculous that is. And I don't really know why. It's like if they were to give like this is honestly what I wish they would do. Okay, all right, on a from things that I most wish they would do to least wish they would do, or at least I would be satisfied with. I would say up here get rid of Rend, fuck Rend, give us overpower and slam baseline, and get rid of that weird slam. Oh, now it does 100% damage, and it costs like 15% more, and that does 200% damage, and it still sucks, and it does shitty damage, and now it costs 133% more, and it's just like, like I'm not happy with slam, okay? And by it doesn't even matter, guys. Like, do you guys even know what slam is? Hopefully you don't, because it's a shitty fucking ability. You should never be using slam. If you're using slam, you're a fucking dumbass. And so anyway, the next thing I would really want them to have is if they're not going to give us back deep wounds, okay, what I would settle for is at least have Thunderclap apply Rend. Okay, to at least have Thunderclap apply Rend. I would rather have Thunderclap apply Rend and remove the gain 3 rage on a Rend tick and just have Thunderclap apply Rend to everything, and then actually make the Arms Warrior the AoE spec. Because right now, there are things that kind of you can build in a single target, like you can use Sudden Death, and you can use obviously a couple of other things I just can't think of them off the top of my head right now, Bloodbath, and but at the end of the day, Arms Warriors suck at single target, and so you really don't want to play that. And so what you're really kind of forced to do here is you're forced to build 2 different sets to be viable in all different fights in the instance, and I find that completely ridiculous, and it's very unfun. And so anyway, I will go through the rest of the fights. Let's see, Brackenspore. Okay, sometimes you do have a second add up, and so that makes warriors at least about as viable as gladiator warriors. But again, either way, they're definitely not going to be top tier on that fight. They are good, but they are not top tier. And Twin Ogron, again, depending on the fight. Like we did it the other day, and I died on the fight, but my boy Artunius like did amazing damage, like 28,000 damage, 28k damage. And so if you're stacking both the ogres up, Pol and Phemos, you're probably going to have a pretty good chance of doing good damage. But again, if you're not using that strat, and I don't really think that's going to be the mythic strat, and you're probably not going to be able to do that fight stacking them up, and so Arms Warriors would not, again, be very good. For Kogrosh, I think that's his name, he's the 5th boss, or I think, no, he's the 6th boss. Oh yeah, I forgot. Did I forget one? I don't even know. The Kogrosh, he's the magic guy. And Arms is like mildly okay for that fight, and the reason for that is that he hits execute phase. Kogrosh hits execute phase 3 or 4 times during the fight, just due to mechanics, and so that allows you to kind of pull up rage for a Colossus Smash. And since the execute phase is very small, you can pretty much pull up enough rage and Colossus Smash a bunch of times, and so you can kind of cheese the fight with Arms Warriors. And that's another thing that I don't like, is that a lot of Warriors damage is built around the last part of the fight, and so until you actually are really close to actually killing the boss, Warriors are actually pretty much useless, because execute is such a huge part of an Arms Warrior's DPS that it's not even going to play into anything until the fight's almost over. And so basically, I mean, like on almost every single fight, by the time that you have the boss to 20%, you either know if you're going to kill the boss or not. And so a lot of like really high execute damage is in a lot of times fluff damage. And so it's like, hey, look at me, I did a lot of damage, but I didn't really do it when it counted. The most important thing for classes to have is have damage on demand. And so that's whenever you can pop cooldowns, chain cooldowns together, and that's what pretty much like whenever in any part of the game, whenever one class has just been extremely good, the reason that it's been extremely good is because it's had damage on demand. And so that means that like you can stack cooldowns, like Warriors were able to stack Skull Banner, yeah, I forgot even the name of that, thank God I forgot the name of that, Recklessness, and like Bloodbath, and like all this other stuff, and so like Colossus Smash, and so that's what made Warriors very, very good in Siege of Orgrimmar, is they could stack so many different cooldowns. It's the same with Hunters. Hunters were able to stack like Rapid Fire, Bestial Wrath, Stampede, all these different things all at the same time, and give themselves amazing damage. And so that's whenever classes are very good, is whenever they are able to stack cooldowns. Well, Warriors, in general in the game, like players don't really have that many cooldowns right now in the game, but Warriors really have none, and the only cooldown that we do have is relatively useless unless we're in execute phase, because honestly, you're able to use Recklessness, and Recklessness lasts for a while, and it doesn't really do all that much damage, and because it only increases your crit chance by a small amount, you're not really able to see a huge noticeable increase in damage until you really get down to execute phase. And so anyway, Warriors like realistic raid utility is very minimal. Rallying Cry was nerfed, and so I wasn't really like all that surprised about that. It doesn't really matter to me, honestly, and so I'm not really too upset about that. But to be honest, guys, like Arms Warriors are really just completely unfun to play. And I know I didn't talk about all the bosses in High Mall, but the ones I did talk about, I think that kind of paints a good enough picture. And so again, I kind of do want to finish, after I finish up talking about Arms, I'm going to talk about Fury and then about Prot and Gladiator Stance. Fucking Arms is so bad. It's fucking awful. I hate it. I don't know who the fuck would want to play a class with 3 buttons. Who the fuck would want to do that? And Whirlwind hits for like basically no damage. The only damage that you do is whenever you can cleave, and so it's just a gimmick, and it's just so fucking boring. Like, you're just sitting there, okay, like I was gonna do a video, guys. I was gonna do a fucking video whenever they originally removed all the abilities, where I did maximum DPS, and every single fucking spell I cast, I spun around in my chair. And the only reason I didn't do that is because I have a keyboard desk right here, a keyboard tray right here, and I'd knock it over. And I almost would want to knock it over just to emphasize how frustrated I am. I am fucking livid about this. I hate it. And Warriors are my favorite class. Arms is my favorite spec, and it sucks. And I am not happy about that at all. I really hope that they make some big changes. Big changes, not just, oh, you're going to get this little minor thing that's a, like, oh, we're going to give you Siegebreaker. We're going to give you Siegebreaker. Nobody even fucking uses that. And it's you give the class that has almost no mobility. We've lost, I think, like 2 or 3 of our gap closers, and in between, like, intervene with Safeguard and intervene with Demo Banner or Mocking Banner. And what we're going to do is we're going to get a spell that knocks things out of melee range. Is that right? Is this how things work here? I am absolutely fucking amazed that was even an idea. And so anyway, I know that it does have some use in PvP, but it completely goes against the entire class, and I think that it should be removed. I thought it was cool. Like, I remember I did it once in High Mall, the Coliseum. I'm like, and then I never fucking cast that spell again, right? Because it sucks. And so anyway, I'm not happy with Arms. And so, okay, now let's go on to Fury. Fury is also another one of my favorite specs, okay? And the reason I like Fury is because you can dual wield large two-handed weapons, and you look like a fucking badass, okay? Just be honest. All right. Fury is probably one of the worst specs in the entire game right now. And the reason for that is that they, instead of making Fury give you double critical strike chance, the Bloodthirst have double critical strike chance, they gave it instead 30% plus 30%. And so while that is better at the beginning of an expansion, it will be horrible at the end. And so the reason for that, or actually towards the very end, it might be good if you can get up to at least 60% crit. But either way, the main problem here is that the entire Fury rotation is built completely around Bloodthirst, and is completely built around Bloodthirst critting. Bloodthirst critting is important for 2 reasons. The first reason is that it obviously procs Raging Blow, and the other reason is that it procs Enrage. Now, Enrage is a huge damage boost, and at the end of Mists of Pandaria, I had over 50% mastery, and so 50% mastery correlates to 50% damage boost. And so, to put this into perspective, if I don't crit a Bloodthirst, I literally lose 50% of my passive, of my total damage, period, okay? And that's not even including the amount of damage that I lose from not having the extra rage from doing the crit, and also the extra damage that I would have from using Raging Blow, which is our heaviest hitting ability. And so it's like you lose. You lose 3 fucking times. You don't get the rage, you don't get Raging Blow, and you don't get Enrage. Like and you know what that makes me? That makes me very, very fucking enraged. Like, I fucking hate that shit. Like, I thought that, okay, I'm gonna get up to level 100. I'm gonna be able to play Fury. It's gonna be okay. It's not. It is not okay. There is no iteration. Furious Strikes is not a replacement. The Wild, they should just make the Wild Strike off the GCD, and just or just, I don't really. I made a video about this before. I wasn't joking. I really don't want Heroic Strike back. I don't really want it at all. I mean, you could give us Wild Strike and basically make it the same thing, and I would be happy. Basically, you just rename Heroic Strike to Wild Strike, and that's really pretty much it. I would be happy with that. But either way, I'm very, very, very disappointed in Fury. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that one spec is just completely non-viable in basically every situation. And so Fury is not viable at all in AoE because Arms does equal if not better AoE, and it does better single target also, and so it's better just in general, and especially under 20%. And also it does horrible single target damage because the entire rotation is based on crits, and so whenever you're playing the class and you don't get a crit, let's say you don't get a Bloodthirst crit, what do? You do shit damage, okay? And if you do get a Bloodthirst crit, oh, you're mediocre. Good job. Now you're a Ret Paladin. And so the problem here is that Bloodthirst does not have a guaranteed crit, and I think that's what it should be. And if they just gave Bloodthirst a guaranteed crit chance, they could balance the class around always being enraged. And or their other thing is they could make Bloodthirst at a 10-second cooldown or something like that, and make it to where you have to stack enough haste to make sure that you could use Bloodthirst and keep enrage up all the time. But I don't know why they don't do any of these things. It's extremely frustrating, and I really wish that they would just explain, like, because whenever they did like the AMA with, I think it was on like Reddit, I didn't even know it was happening. I was asleep, and so whenever they did it, I kind of like read over everything on MMO Champion, and there was nothing about warriors. Like literally almost every single other class was discussed and has been discussed at one point or another since Warlords of Draenor has been released, except for warriors. Warriors have, as far as I know, never really been discussed except for whenever you read 20% less damage to Shield Slam and Revenge, which is fucking amazing since Prot Warriors are one of the lowest damage tanks whenever they're actually trying to play defensively anyway. And so that's extremely frustrating. So either way, I think Fury needs a huge rework, and actually, you know what? It doesn't really need a huge rework. I was wrong. It just needs Bloodthirst to always crit, and then build everything else around that. If Bloodthirst always critting is going to make Fury do too much damage, then rework the Mastery. Make Mastery do something else, okay? But I don't think I'd just get rid of fucking Mastery. I don't care if it just makes your character bigger. Like, I would still fucking stack Mastery. That would be awesome. Honestly, like, if the amount of Mastery is like a percentage increase in the size of your character, God, I'd have to get new trinkets, guys. I'd have to get new trinkets. But either way, I really do wish that they would make a lot of changes to Fury, because it sucks, okay? And so anyway, now we will talk about Prot. Now, Prot Warriors are in a not horrible spot right now, and they're in a not horrible spot in raid tanking and single target raid tanking, and the reason for that is they obviously have two different ways to use defensive cooldowns. They can use Shield Block and Shield Barrier, which are both useful in different situations. And they also have Shield Wall, Last Stand, and Demoralizing Shout, which are all useful. They can also use Heroic Leap to get away. They have a lot of movement. There's a lot of very, very good things about Prot Warriors in raid tanking and single target raid tanking. Like, they're probably one of the best single target raid tanks in the game right now. Just say that right off. Okay, and they also have Ravager, which is probably always what you should be using as a tank. And so Warriors are amazing for single target raid tanking. The problem is that Warrior tanks are not really amazing for anything else. And the reason for that is that because Warriors also have to trade damage for trade damage for survivability. And so, like, for example, in challenge modes, Warriors have a couple of very good things they can use. They can use Bladestorm. I know that some of my buddies in my guild don't really like to use Bladestorm as Prot Warriors, but I prefer to do it and use it with Demo Shout. But either way, both of the ways work. Ravager does a lot of damage, but the problem is that you have to trade DPS for survivability, and so unless you have an amazingly good healer, Prot Warriors are extremely bad compared to, like, let's say a Death Knight, and a Death Knight does not really have to trade very much survivability for healing. I know that Death Knights do have a Rune Tap, and they also have, what's it called? Not Conversion. I think it's called a Runic Conversion or Conversion, one of the others, one of the two. And so the point here is that they don't really have to trade DPS for survivability as much as Warriors do, and because of that, Death Knights have a lot stronger passive DPS than Warriors do, and also they have a lot stronger AoE DPS than Warriors do, outside of Ravager and Bladestorm. And so it makes Warriors very very unattractive for challenge modes and small, like, kind of dungeon tanking. And so if you're going full DPS, you're taking a lot of damage, and if you're going full survivability, you're not doing a lot of damage. And so while that does allow you a lot of, I guess, like, customization between, like, what you can do and what you can't, the problem for that is that, of course, you want to find a healthy medium, and also whenever other classes do not have to make that trade in the same way. Like, I don't really think that Prot Paladins have to make that trade as much, and neither do... well, I guess Guardian Druids do a little bit, but not, again, not quite as much. And so it is kind of frustrating for me to have to deal with that. And yeah, because Guardian Druids, the only thing that they really offensively spend their rage on is Bash, I think, or the cleave thing that they have, and they proc that a lot with just auto attacks and swipe and stuff. And so I don't really think that Guardian Druids really have to worry about that either. I know that monks. I actually know nothing about monks. I know nothing about monks, and so I will not even comment. But either way, so I do think that Prot Warriors do need a damage rework, and kind of figuring out what that is. And I know that why they were nerfed is that the last thing we're going to talk about is Gladiator Stance. Now, Gladiator Stance is something that I was kind of looking forward to. Like, the first thing that I did, like, guys, let me see, like, where do you see that fucking TV? I spent a lot of money on that TV. That's a like an LCL LED, like really nice TV. It was a few years ago, so it's not like a 4K resolution or anything, but it's a really, really nice TV. And the first thing I watched, 300, and I watched it. I'm not even kidding. I finished watching it. I got on the TV, or I got on the computer, did some stuff, went on Facebook, posted about how good my TV is, and then you know what I did? I went and I watched it again. That's how fucking good it is. And I love 300, and so I was like, all right, this is it. Sword and shield, I'm fucking Leonidas. And so I was trying to figure out some kind of Spartan armor for myself, and then I got challenge mode gear, so I had to be swagging, so I stopped doing that. But either way, the point is that I really like the idea of Gladiator Stance, but I do not really think that it was a good idea that was implemented. I think that it's a can of worms, and because of Gladiator Stance, Prot was nerfed, and Prot already did not have very high damage, and so that's an issue. Also, Gladiator Stance, you have to try extremely hard, much harder than you have to try with the other two specs, to do maybe 10 to 20% more DPS, which I do not really think is very fun, and it also involves a lot of spamming. You have to be spamming every single GCD. You should be using something, and then on top of that, you should also be using Heroic Strike as much as you can, provided that you have at least 3 stacks of unyielding strikes. And so that's another issue. And then also you're using something else off the global cooldown, which is a shield charge. And so you're using all these different buttons, and it's like really fun to play. But like, man, like the amount of buttons that I'm pressing, I should be doing like 100,000 DPS, but I'm not. And so it's extremely frustrating to play Gladiator Stance and to not kind of have at least like a stronger throughput damage. And I know that maybe that might change whenever I get better gear. And I know the Gladiator Warriors are doing very good damage in certain fights, and certain Gladiators are. I'm not, I'm not extremely very geared for it, and I'm also not very, I'm not perfect at playing it, honestly. I'm okay at playing it, but I'm not perfect. And so either way, I do think it's kind of frustrating that Gladiator Stance exists, and also that you have to play, like, I think it's kind of stupid that you have to play Prot for PvE. I always assumed that Gladiator Stance would be kind of for PvP, and it would kind of fill the same role that Prot Warriors did in Season 8 and also a little bit in Season 7 in Wrath of the Lich King. And so the more like full-fledged DPS it is, I think it's just going to cause more problems. And so I really hope that they kind of, it's like like all the time, like Warriors have kind of had like this unspoken assumption that Fury is the PvE spec and Arms is the PvP spec. And so now, which one is which? And so I wish that they would kind of just say, this is basically the PvP spec, this is basically the PvE spec, and this is how it is. And so, or not really say it, but kind of imply it with the different talents, and kind of build each spec for that specification and type of gameplay. And so anyway, guys, this video is getting kind of long, and so I don't really want to talk about this too much, but I think that I've kind of talked about pretty much all of the specs and what things that I really need to, that I really not need to, but I really want to see changed. And again, I'll kind of just go over everything. I really wish that they would either get rid of Rend or, you know, at least make Thunderclap apply it. And I also wish that they would give back Overpower, which is my number one ask for all things warrior related. And for Fury, I wish they would just make Bloodthirst auto crit and balance everything around it, so it's not an RNG fest that's full of you know, like hopes and dreams, and then the fucking shattered nightmares. Because whenever you don't get 3 Bloodthirst crits, you're doing bottom DPS. And with Prot, they should balance it around, like at least like give us some stronger AOE DPS, because honestly, it's not very good right now. And also with Gladiator Stance, I wish they would kind of just build it into a PvP spec and just not make it, you know, I don't really want Gladiator spec to be the best, Gladiator Stance to be the best spec for PvE. I just don't really think that there's a place for it. especially with Gladiator Warriors having to compete with tanks on bonus armor gear. It just creates a lot of problems that shouldn't exist. So anyway, I probably should have talked about that earlier. But either way, 25 minutes in, or I don't know, I think maybe I fucked up a couple of things, so maybe it's not quite 25 minutes. Either way, let me know what you guys think. I would really, really hope that people kind of, I don't really want people to, I guess, like, I'm not going to say, like, I'll link my video everywhere, but please try and spread the word that Warriors are not in a very good spot right now, and there's a lot of things that can and should and need to be changed. And so hopefully this was informative. Hopefully you agree, and hopefully they'll change something. So thanks for watching, and like, comment, subscribe.